So more people joining. Good.
Yeah, it's now 3 o'clock. So let's wait 1 minute or something. 1 or 2 minutes.
Right. Yep, we'll give it a start. Kirsi?
Yes.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to invite you all to this very, very interesting session we have today. It's a hot topic, and I'm especially thankful that we have David from ICC participating, because it's really important that because you all have been involved in this important work, that but David especially. We have had many seminars already. I think this is this a 4th or 5th now?
5th.
5th, yes. And mainly we have bankers and fintechs and of course corporate customers as well. But it's good to have an ICC Banking Commission participating as well. I'm Kirsi Larkela. I'm running a fintech ecosystem. Our aim is to innovate and help all the financial services users and participants to make new innovative solutions. And of course, trade finance is one of the core areas which has to be innovated and make something new to happen. So we have a digitalized services. So Andre, please, you are the moderator today.
Yes, Kirsi. Indeed, we are back with Finnish Fintech Ecosystem and myself to bring you latest trends in digital treasury and trade. This is our 5th session since we started mid-May, and we're expanding. Initially, we thought we would organize those sessions for the Nordic market, but we see now more and more people joining, thanks to our LinkedIn advertisements, joining from Africa and outside of the Nordic region in Europe. So very welcome to all of you. We really want to be focused here on those sessions. We want to come back regularly with very specific topics, always focused on banks, corporates, asset managers around treasury and trade finance. Today, we thought we would bring you recent information about what ICC has been doing under the leadership of Michael, under the digitalization working group, focused on the automation of doc checking. There was a particular work stream started in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, and this is exactly what we want to debate today, to bring to you, whether you're a bank or a corporate customer joining us. So I have the pleasure to welcome Michael Vrontamitis. Usually Michael, we never present, everyone knows Michael. Michael has joined us in Helsinki in 2019 and 2020 when we organized the physical events at OP Bank. Michael is an independent advisor now, and indeed acting since a few years now, half a decade, I believe, as the co-chair of the ICC Digitalization Working Group. We also have from the ICC side, Dave Meynell. Everyone knows Dave if you are an expert in documentary trade. You have certainly relied on Dave's opinions and advisors through the ICC channels. I've worked also with Dave for the last decade and acting as a senior technical advisor for the ICC Banking Commission. Dave will tell us more indeed about the work that has been going on there on automated doc checking. And finally, we have the technology man, Uzair Bawany, representing also the ICC work stream as a co-chair of the work stream we're going to focus on, and also founder of Traydstream, a fintech specialized in bringing automated doc checking technology to banks and corporates. So without further ado, welcome, gentlemen. Great to have you here. And let's start with Michael. Can you tell us more about the ICC efforts indeed you're leading since a few years around trade digitization?
Thanks, Andre, and good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. I see quite a broad range of people joining the call from all over the world, so that's fantastic. I think, Andre, we set up the ICC Digitization Working Group for Trade and Trade Finance in 2017 after the Jakarta Banking Commission meeting. And we focused first on a couple of key actions. The first was really to look at EUCP, which was created back in the 1990s. And then we also decided under Dave's leadership actually to create EURC. And we took, in this sort of period while we were updating those rules, we took some time to try and understand this complex jigsaw that we all refer to as trade digitization, with all the multiple stakeholders involved and the multiple, and trying to understand why it was still in paper. We commissioned a piece of work with the legal group to review the legal status of electronic bills of lading, which was undertaken at the time by Clyde & Co. And we looked at 15 major trading nations. And of the 15 major trading nations that we looked at, we found that actually only one had any legal status for electronic bills of lading. All the others would not recognize an electronic bill of lading. And you had to look at private law solutions in order to get an electronic bill of lading. So it became pretty clear as we tried to understand the problem statement that there was no coordinated effort to digitize trade, and banks and the broader trade ecosystem would sort of be stuck with dealing with paper in trade finance for, well, basically until this was solved. And so what we came up with was a roadmap, and a roadmap was really needed to inform the players, the governments, industry bodies, banks, and an industry as to what was actually needed from each of them to be able to move the needle. And we finalized this in 2018, and we set out 3 key areas of focus. The first was really around legal infrastructure. And this was where we had governments as the key responsible party for legal infrastructure. We then had rules and standards, where we put ICC as the responsible party along with other industry bodies to develop and create rules and standards. And finally, digital transformation was necessary, where industry, corporates, financial institutions needed to take the lead. And over the past 3 years, and with the acceleration due to the pandemic, we have seen governments begin to rise to the challenge of updating their infrastructure. And we've seen that with a number of countries, starting with Bahrain in 2019, Singapore, Abu Dhabi picking up. We've seen the UK Law Commission. I'm sure this has been part of your seminar series. And then we also launched, and the ICC launched the ICC Digital Standards Initiative, DSI, under the leadership of Oswald Kayla. And that really grew out of an industry movement with corporates, banks, technology companies, shipping companies, realizing the need for a sort of standards initiative. And the ICC took ownership for that and launched it. And we've seen companies pick up on digital transformation, which is where the ICC Banking Commission is now focusing its efforts. So, for example, our current focus is really around writing standardized APIs for bankings, guarantees, letters of credit. This would extend to open account trade finance as well. We're focusing on the commercialization of the rules that have been launched, so EUCP and EURC. And Dave and the team have launched URDTT, Universal Rules for Digital Trade Transactions, and that went to vote. So we're just waiting for the results as to whether that will be passed by the national committees. I expect so, and we'll be focusing on the commercialization of these rules as well as updating these rules as required from the ICC. And as part of this work, we issued the issues brief, which we're going to discuss today, on the automation of documentary checking. And our focus really 2021 will be about commercializing rule changes, the new standards and legal infrastructure, and really trying to maintain this momentum and accelerate this momentum that we're now seeing in trade and trade finance digitization. So that's the focus.
Thank you, Michael. A very busy agenda, huge scope, and new deliverables indeed, like the new URDTT rules. Uzair, can you tell us more about why you got involved as a co-chair of the new working group?
Oh yeah, thanks, and thanks, Andre, and everybody for being here today. And really, obviously, it's been a bit of a kind of a brainchild of a bunch of people. Michael approached me almost 2 years ago now, in his previous capacity in banking, and seeing what we were doing to sort of say, look, could we look at this area? I think Michael, and I'm speaking on your behalf, so tell me if I'm saying anything wrong, but I think the view was that we need to make this a much more universally accepted idea and concept, and that actually doc automation is a possibility. It is not a luxury, and actually it should be a necessity. And I know Dave has also been very supportive of some of those ideas. So it was really brought up of a few discussions around that. And I was delighted, honored, and excited to put together a team with Marissa, who's on my co-chair at Lloyd's, a team of both bankers, trade finance experts, people with technology backgrounds like organizations like ours, as well as the looking at all the corporates and banks together. So I think we've got some really strong brains in the room, and the paper that we produced was, we hope, something that allows all users and stakeholders to be able to take a very simple framework and adopt it in a different way across whatever your business is, but allowing it to be able to be used in a very simple way. So it's I hope that it has the desired effect, and we're very passionate about wanting to make that much more open and giving people lots of opportunity to get involved.
Great. So indeed, a new paper as a deliverable, thanks to the expertise of the members of the working group. Dave, can you tell us more about this new deliverable, the purpose of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to join your webinar. Much appreciated to give our viewpoint. As everybody said so far, I mean, we're all aware that everyone involved in international trade is seeing this increasing drive towards automation, towards digitalization in all aspects of our business. And it has, and I'll use the word finally, extended to the automation of the doc examination process. I recall a statement made last year whilst we were preparing one of our COVID papers. That paper is the Achilles heel of international trade. And I think the Achilles heel of international trade itself is document examination. It is so costly. It involves so many resources. And to be honest, it's not always as good as it should be, because it can be very subjective. So this document automation of document examination has the potential to provide enormous cost and operational benefits. However, we felt this wasn't really very widely known. And having worked with Uzair now for a few months on this, it's very clear that much of the market was not aware of where we were going under these solutions. So as such, the ICC thought it would be a very good idea to look at the technologies that are enabling the automation, things such as also artificial intelligence, machine learning, optical character recognition, amongst many others, and analyse their usage. And this resulted in the paper that we've already mentioned. It was released last month, and as stated in the paper, it's intended to give guidance to the relative decision makers in banks, financial institutions, etc., as to the next proposed steps they should take in this area. and it analyses both the opportunities and the challenges when automating this business process. We all know document examination is time consuming and costly, but it's necessary, it's unavoidable. And I must admit, in all of my trade career when I was in banking, I always said that the process is an art, not a science. It's feelings, it's all sorts of things. However, we finally reached a stage where that's not the case. It now has become a science. And that's something Uzair's taught me, and it's been quite eye-opening and very revealing. So in summary, the paper is the first step in introducing the wider market to automated document examination.
Thank you, Dave. So let's look closer to the paper, and if Uzair can tell us about the main conclusions from this piece of work.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried not to make it a sort of a conclusion based. We've tried to keep it very open in terms of just giving people the comfort that actually this does work, providing a risk framework where you can plot exactly where you are on your journey, and recognizing, and we use the analogy of the driverless car on a 0 to 5 level, 0 being I'm in a manual car, 5 being I don't touch the steering wheel. Where are you on that journey within your digital transformation and trade? And I think the point is there are use cases and opportunities at all levels of automation, and you can move up the ranks as you go. Because I think one of the biggest challenges for many organizations is, well, where does everything fit in? And I'm not ready to do this. And how can I do this? And what should I do now? And I think what we've tried to do is to try and unpick some of those challenges by saying it doesn't matter where you are, as Dave alluded to, with whether it's an OCR issue, whether it's a document automation issue, whatever those issues, whatever your challenge or whatever your pain points are, there is a solution and opportunity. So we've tried not to make it a kind of a you have to do this kind of paper. And I hope it's quite thought-provoking for people to say, actually, this is easier than we thought it was. Oh, this is actually doable that we didn't think it was. And interestingly enough, we've been producing surveys and doing results from the ICC from our group, and there's still a lot of reticence. And Dave said what he said is right. And I'm surprised sometimes that actually people still don't believe this can work. And I'm hoping that the paper is actually just about awareness to say it does work, it can work, and you should look at this. And the plan, kind of stage 2 of our group, is very much around the PR and the messaging, which I hope in the coming months you'll see more of, to give people confidence that no matter where you are and whatever you do, whether you're doing everything manually or you're half automated, there is something there for you.
Yeah, it is indeed an educational paper available to all. So we'll share it afterwards for those of you in the participants, in the attendees that are looking to get a copy. And indeed, it's we often say trade has not digitized, is lagging, and for good reasons, like regulatory restrictions. Paper is still much required, but here certainly indeed new technologies such as AI enable trade to leapfrog some of the digitization objectives, which is all about automating a process, even if the process is not yet fully digitized. So, Michael, how do you see the industry starting to progress on this development? Is this seen as a low-hanging fruit, or a kind of long-term dream, yet another long-term dream potentially, that the trade industry has on its radar?
So I think the best way to answer this question is to look back. So when I was the product head at Stanchart in 2015, on my previous employer, we drew up a strategy document of what we wanted what we imagined the future would be. And we sort of imagined that you would receive more data, so more documents would become electronic over a period of time. There would be more networks out there that would feed data into the bank, but you would still have paper coming in. But ultimately, banks, it's relatively straightforward, right? Trade finance, if you break it down, is basically, it's a question of you're doing a match to make a decision around settling a transaction or providing risk management or financing. But essentially you're doing a matching, right? Whether it's under UCP 600, whether it's invoice PO financing, whatever the financing is. And we had drawn a box that said we need some sort of way, because we have to reduce costs, because there's pressure on capital, there's pressure on costs, there's pressure on revenue for most financial institutions. And so we had drawn a box that said, we need to do an automated doc check here. And we need to be able to apply this to the open account space, as well as we need to apply it to the documentary trade space. In 2015, there was no providers out there in trade finance. Today, we have 4 or 5 providers in the group that are actively providing services. So you can see the shift. And what's possible is this is completely possible. So I think sometimes it's good to look at other professions and see what they have done, and then apply the same learnings to your profession. And when I took a look at for example, the legal profession, there's examples in legal today where they use AI for doc recognition, OCR, doc checking to find contractual clauses, and they're able to speed up the pace of that and the cost, and reduce the cost of it quite significantly. And there was a study in 2018 by a company called Law Geeks that pitted their AI engine against 20 human attorneys to look at NDA agreements. And what they found was that the average accuracy for the AI was about 94% versus the average for lawyers at 85%. So not too different. And the speed, though, was the lawyers took an average 92 minutes versus the AI taking 26 seconds. Okay. And that is studying an NDA agreement. Now trade finance is a legal profession in one aspect or the other, and you can learn from what's being done in the legal profession and apply it here, and that's exactly what's been done with these companies. So I don't think this is a dream; it's a reality. It's here. It's now. I think what Uzair mentioned in terms of people's perception, we've already seen people's perception begin to move, because once you see it, then you realize, oh, it is possible. Then you have to kind of get over the willful blindnesses. I'm going to have to cut jobs, right? And then how am I going to deal with the human side of this problem? Because there's a human side of problem that it creates. But you're under pressure to reduce jobs anyway. If you're in an operations function, whether you're sitting in a bank or whether you're sitting in a corporate, there's always pressure on reducing costs. So I think what this does is it provides that opportunity, but then it provides a development opportunity for people as well. So I think it's a reality. It's a here and now. It's implementable. I think there's stages. The great thing about this paper is it lays out how to think about those stages and how to measure yourself against where you'll be on that journey. And it's okay to be at the bottom of the journey. It means that you have room ahead of you, or you can be in the mid. It's okay. And I love the driverless car analogy. It really works for this.
Okay, that's excellent. So it's available because of the number of providers. It's working because of, as demonstrated by early adopters, and it doesn't require banks and corporates to change the way they're working, because they can take advantage of that technology without changing and keep on using the letter of credit or whichever financial instrument they have been choosing for their various transactions. So yeah, as you say, that needs to be demonstrated in order to see the magic. So possibly this is finally, I say finally because the industry has worked on many trade innovations for the last 2 decades, starting with Bolero in 97, the initial Bolero, I mean, and there was never really something scalable, but it looks this piece of technology and this approach to automate doc checking is now really something that is scalable in the short term for existing instruments.
Yeah, so Andre, I think you have to think about it in terms of digitalization versus digitization. Digitalization, something like Bolero, is about changing a whole ecosystem, right? So, many players providing electronic documents and everything becoming electronic. This is digitization, which is you can control your own destiny. It's in your shop. You're able to manage the efficiency yourself using the technology that's there. And OCR has been around for a very, very, very long time. It's getting better every year. and machine learning's been around for a long time as well. And again, it's also getting better every year. So I think it's just about using existing technologies that exist and applying them to your own personal situation. And you're much easier to control your own situation than trying to get everyone else to kind of adopt the same technology as you.
Indeed, it can be leveraged and utilized by a single institution independently of the choice of their counterparties, which is another benefit. Yeah. So indeed, I looked at the paper and I saw a nice table regarding the levels of automation that are described there. Dave, can you tell us more about this sequential approach?
Yeah, absolutely. As Uzair and Michael have both mentioned, the working group had a great idea of adapting a matrix classification that they come across, which is in common usage for self-driving cars, which outlines the different levels of automation involved in the process. And we thought we can do that with document examination as well. And we start with the lowest level with no automation, up to the highest level, which I guess is nirvana, which may be many years away, the completely automated process without any human intervention. Achieving different levels, certain levels of automation in the process broadly depends on two aspects. First is the ability to correctly classify and extract data from paper documents. You must have that to begin with. And secondly, to subsequently utilize that extracted data to determine a compliant presentation or not. The matrix is progressive, so a high level of automation relies on the sum of the technologies from the previous levels and delivers the totality of the automation. Going to the paper itself, we go from level 0, which is no automation, which unfortunately is still where many banks are these days. The entire document examination process is executed manually using paper documents. We go to paper 1, where a number of organizations have moved, includes document imaging. Paper documents are scanned and the document examination process is executed manually by a human, but based on scanned images rather than the paper documents that we had in the past. On to level 2, again, a number of organizations have got here, basic automation. The scanned images are processed via the optical character recognition or data capture solutions, and the results are used to support the examination process by automating certain simple tasks or by very effectively reducing data entry. A human is still actively involved in all steps of that digitization and document examination process. Then we get into level 3, which is where we want to see a lot more banks getting to in the near future, which is a partial automation. So the process is largely automated, but it's supervised by a human. Only certain critical parts of the document examination process are manually executed. Then we'll go to 4, which will be high automation. I don't think anybody's there yet. If they are, wonderful, but I think this is a little bit further in the future, where the entire process is automated and the human's only involved to handle exceptions when requested to intervene by the system. Now, I know organizations such as Uzair's can do this at the moment, but I'm not sure how many organizations have actually introduced this high automation. And then finally, of course, the full automation, there are no humans. The entire document examination process is standardized. It's executed straight through processing without human intervention. So that's basically a summary, Andre, of all the different steps in the matrix.
Okay, so it's highly adaptive. Banks can start using it at different levels. There is a way to go about it at your own space, basically. Thank you, Dave. Uzair, anything else on the paper you want to add? You're definitely there representing the technology provider. And talking to a lot of banks since a couple of years around this topic. What are the typical reactions you're getting from the banks you're talking to about this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, both Dave and Michael have said it well. I mean, seeing is believing, right? I've always been a big advocate of that. I think, and even if I look at our journey over the last 5 years, it's really evolved from, you know, being to a point now where we can prove that our platform can do document checking in the same way as a human can. You know, I think that has been the sort of labor of love that's required. In fact, you know, Dave and I were talking this morning about how do you work out UCP 600 rules and how do you do all the ISBP rules, and it is a lot of effort, and we can share more with anybody, but it does require A leap of faith. B, there's this issue around the value add and what the benefit is from a business perspective. Cost obviously is a huge mitigating point, but there are so many other things. I mean, we've talked about this before, but the fact that you now have a machine that doesn't need vacations, doesn't need coffees, and doesn't need weekends off. I mean, that alone is a big value add. Then you've got the benefit of the fact that you're reducing your operational risk. I mean, we're working with customers around the world where the machine is picking up more errors than the humans that they pick up on tests. I mean, I mean, we're working with one bank. Out of the 75 documents, they missed 104 discrepancies the platform picked up. You know, it's kind of scary with the kind of operational risk that's being run on the shop floors every day, relying on a few humans. And of course, if they leave, the biggest problem, and Michael mentioned this point about the human, is that what happens when they leave? Finding people today, kids don't want to get into document checking. You don't want a graduate doesn't want to be a doc checker. But actually what this does, and again, it's a part of the paper that we allude to, and there'll be more on this when we discuss it, is actually this creates a whole new raft of opportunity for younger people who want to get more involved in what I term the sexy side of business, which is machine learning, AI, using sort of deep learning models. And I think that's where I think there's an opportunity for the future of this business. To be able to grow faster and better as a result of that. So look, you know, we will be coming out with lots of stuff in the next year as a business, and sorry, as the ICC, around use cases, what we've proven, and lots of messaging to hopefully get the idea across. But all I'll say to anybody is give it a try. I mean, literally, it can cost you next to nothing. It's a very agile environment, and I would say, you know, seeing is believing. And you know, I think the old style RFPs with, you know, 6 weeks of writing up documents, I think are disappearing now. People are now saying, well, okay, here's some docs, show me it works. And that's enough of an RFP to prove that things work. So hopefully we'll see more of that as we move along.
Yeah, it's a typical case whereby we will wonder in a few years how comes we have been able to go through all those operational risks due to the manual processing. And indeed, a higher accuracy level offered by the technology will be a no-brainer in a matter of years. I think it's also a very good illustration of how highly specialized technology providers like automated doc checking solutions like Traydstream you represent here are actually addressing one specific pain point and trying to be the best at it. And integrated themselves into a business ecosystem. That means the letter of credit is there; it won't disappear, despite what some have said in the past. The channels, the back office systems, the expertise of the teams, everything is there, and it's actually enhanced through the new technology provider, rather than being targeted for replacement. So indeed, if there is any magic, I think this is an area where technology is delivering magic, because the figures Michael quoted about the few seconds on the your legal example to find a particular solution to or your legal example, I don't remember exactly what it was, but finding a response to the legal
NDA check. Non-disclosure agreements. Yeah.
Non-disclosure, that's it. It was outside of trade finance, that's why I forgot it. And compared to the human, indeed, this is where automation and AI and availability to the right data, the semantics of the documents is making a huge difference. So indeed, seeing is believing, as you say, Uzair here. I'm checking for the chat to see if there is any question. Yes, we have one now. Thank you to the first one. Do you think doc checking as a function can be outsourced to a technology partner by banks? Of course, the word outsourcing here is the one for debate. Uzair, what is your view?
I mean, I'm interested to get everybody else's view on the panel as well, but
sure.
It's actually an interesting point. So by outsourcing, in effect, you're just doing what everyone else is doing, and it becomes a cheaper form of outsourcing. One of the things that people forget about, which to me is actually the real jewel in this whole opportunity, apart from all the stuff we've talked about, is the data. The value of the data and what you can do with that information as a business, for business decisions, for making calls on how you treat certain situations, that data has a lot of value. Now, we have been asked, interestingly enough, by one customer to say, can we just outsource the whole thing to you? And actually, that doesn't solve the problem, which is actually, how do you actually improve internally your process and structures and ensure that you maintain the risk and the client and the management of that? So what we've done, interestingly enough, is as a really quick way to get a customer live, is they've outsourced the kind of the machine learning part. So what we do is train the machine for them. But the decision making, because, you know, to Dave's point about is doc checking an art or a science, ultimately a decision whether something's discrepant ultimately lies with the bank, and the risk is at the heart of the bank and their customer, not me as a provider. We can provide you with that decision, but the decision has to be taken by the bank. And again, I'm interested to get Michael's view on this, but so we will support that to make it faster and easier through training the machine and the models, but the decision and the processing and the checking has to lay with the bank who are providing the financing for that particular trade. Michael, I mean.
So I think the answer depends on who you are. You know, I think, you know, I think what you said is absolutely right, which is it's much better to get your process right, whether you outsource it or don't outsource it. And what are you outsourcing? Are you outsourcing the human intervention, or are you outsourcing the computer machine learning piece, or the process completely? And I think there'll be a space for outsourced providers here, but ultimately that will come down to the liability risks that the outsourced provider will take versus what the bank is willing to take. And, you know, most discrepancies, and Dave is the expert here, but most discrepancies are accepted. And why they accepted is because there's not really an issue with a transaction. Discrepancies are usually used to delay the payment. And if there's a problem, to try and wiggle out of the payment, and that's generally what discrepancies are kind of used for in the LC space. So the machine will definitely minimize those operational risks, but you can never get rid of them completely unless both banks agree to use the same or similar softwares to run that, so that the acceptance happens real time. So I think that I think will be a possible future where banks start to collaborate on the use of technology. But when it comes to the outsourcing question, I think it really depends. If you're a small player and you do very, very few of these, then yeah, outsource it, take the liability risks, move on. If you're a big player, why would you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points here. The word outsourcing can be very emotive. I know back in the 90s, the bank I used to work with for a long time, we did a lot of outsourcing or insourcing, to be honest, in the trade side. And it created all sorts of different financial balance risk mitigation problems on both sides. And I don't think the words like that much. I see it more as partnering, to be honest. The technology provider, the fintech and the banks working together to see how they can solve this. But it's interesting hearing Michael talk about discrepancies. What is a discrepancy? And yeah, in the human world and the paper world, it's caused all sorts of problems. I mean, what is it? Something like 75% of documents are refused on first presentation. Absolutely ridiculous. What is the cost of that in the world? Can't believe it. But one of the things we've included in the paper, we haven't actually stopped at the technology side. We've also reminded people that there are other initiatives that have been brought out, one of which was something from the ICC a couple of years back, where they provided guidance notes on documentary credit formats. The problem with many documentary credits around the world these days is that the form is 50 years old and includes about a dozen documents nobody needs anymore, 100 requirements that nobody needs anymore. And because people can't be bothered to change them, that's how they are. I really push this all the time. Banks should be looking to improve their documentary credit formats. By the way, you don't need to do that to get machine learning or artificial intelligence, but it would help you enormously in both the paper and the technology world. So improve the credit you've got already. I did this at my previous employers a long time ago, and we cut the size of our documentary credits by half by talking to our clients, because half the conditions there weren't even needed.
Okay, thank you. Looking at the next questions, one for Uzair, I guess. So far, how many banks have already using have already been using Traydstream for doc checking or looking at using?
Okay, so just without giving away too many, obviously, information on that front, but I can tell you that, if you talk about where we're in pilots, trials, mandates, we expect to be close to 50 odd banks by the end of this year in corporates, and doubling and trebling that for next year. So we're definitely seeing momentum moving where more and more banks globally are now looking at this very seriously, and obviously corporates. And it also helps with the fact that we've got a global sales team now, so I guess that helps the touch points. But yeah, that's the kind of number we're looking at today.
Yeah, I think compared to 2 years ago, the topic is being very well advertised and start to be known in the market. And indeed, compared to 2 years ago, the market is heating up to this technology opportunity. The other question we got is, will doc checking software have any provision to check the price or dual use goods from a trade-based money laundering perspective?
So I mean, I'm guessing I speak on behalf of most technology providers, including us. We do provide a lot of these compliance checks. So we work with many of the, so again, the data, you've got the data. Once you've got the data, doing the checks using APIs, as Michael said, becomes very easy. You can, we've got seamless API integrations for DUGs with Acuity and Furcasoft or WorldCheck and Refinitiv platform, or LSE as it is now, Lloyd's for vessel tracking. So you've got all the Polestar I want to talk about. So all that price, all that checking is available in real time. So to Michael's point, we've done some experiments. What takes 20 minutes to go onto a website, take your bill of lading, enter your details, can be done in 30 seconds. Literally 30 seconds, you get the same view. So there's a huge value add and use case for that. On the price checking, I think it's a lot more complicated. So, when you go around the world and you talk to banks, and interestingly enough, I was in one of the Southeast Asian countries when we used to travel, and the hot thing was solar panels. So that was the hot way of kind of under-invoicing and over-invoicing, because there is such a huge variety of specs on a solar panel on the price, that how do you get a machine to check? It's easy if it's a commodity, you can check it against something. But when you've got so much array of different things, what we are doing, and we did something with the university in Wales, some PhDs and data scientists there, is actually looking at a customer's own price range and looking at behavioral science to say, well, you've traditionally paid 20 euros for this product. The same product is now 60 euros. Is there an issue here? So that's the kind of stuff that you can do through behavioral. But to do a full-blown 100% price check on every single good in the world, I think that's a huge challenge and not an easy one to try and get without large number of false positives, which defeats the object of what you're trying to achieve. I don't know, Michael, if you've had any view on that for price checking.
I think on price checking, it's not, in my view, it's not the bank's responsibility. I think you want to be doing it from an AML and fraud perspective. But a lot of this is around export.
You're right.
Manage export risks, and the question is whether that should fall to banks. And I know that from a BAFT perspective, we had pushed very, very hard back on this topic, where it shouldn't be the bank's responsibility. But I think the point that you made around the data being available, and once you've got the data, then you can then run various models against it, whether it's you're connecting directly through your own platform, or whether you connect to other platforms, because once you've got the data, you can then feed other platforms with APIs with information that allows you to meet compliance requirements. So yeah, it does help with the compliance requirements, but you're going to have to define what you want to meet from your regulator's standpoint. And one of the challenges of having all the data is that you need to check more. So you may want to decide on what you pull out of the OCR.
Yeah, on the basis of the trade-based money laundering and regulatory aspects, we actually mentioned in the paper that at the very minimum, organisations should be ensuring that existing risk management policies are extended to include new solutions, including automated document checking. You do need to examine your risk management policies.
Okay, very good. Yeah, another use case we have seen recently from Lloyd's, Marisa advertised this on LinkedIn as well, is using this data to provide more visibility to corporate clients via the website. So basically just providing access to the latest status of a transaction. It's a very simple use case. And I know Lloyd's, I mean, it's all public information. If you follow Marissa's post on LinkedIn, have developed a trade tracker to basically provide easy access, website-based or mobile app-based access to transaction details. Very easy, straightforward, but enabled through the availability of the transaction data in the system like Traydstream. What about the future of trade finance professionals? Unless they adapt and learn programming tech. I guess that's what they want to do anyway. Adapt and learn tech.
Well, I think the point is, and then yeah, Michael has raised this point about the future of people, but I think to me, ultimately, the decision on whether something is discrepant and whether you accept a discrepancy will always lie with the financier, largely. So therefore, I don't ever see tech being at a point where it just automatically replaces things 100%. I just think, like outsourcing, people have to move up the value chain. Other opportunities that will exist we don't even see today. So I don't think doc checkers need to be concerned that there's no job for them tomorrow. But I do think that there'll be more for them to do and a greater level of responsibility and probably a bit more focused on some of the issues around solving problems rather than trying to identify them.
The world's going to move on anyway, whether banks do this or not. If the banks don't do it, the fintechs will, or the corporates will do it themselves. So it's not actually a relevant question as to what's going to happen to these people, because this is going to happen regardless. And I agree with what Uzair says. I think these people will actually move further up the value chain. They'll have better jobs to attend to rather than just checking pieces of paper.
And this is related to the young talents programs of BAFT, ICC, or ITFA, where we're trying, different people like Duarte on the ITFA side is trying to attract the younger generation to trade finance. And this is definitely a good example of being more attractive than checking paper documents. Sorry, Michael, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, look, I think I'm going to reiterate something that Dave said, but today, if you look at the war on talent with banks, asset managers are stealing from banks, fintechs are stealing from banks, or banks are shedding staff and people are going to these different locations. And it's not the untalented people, it's the talented, smart people who have drive that are moving. And I think banks who don't adapt and change their processes, they're going to be out of business, because the service levels and the speed and are going to improve. And does that mean that the operational staff at a bank, are they going to need to transform what they do? Absolutely. Will it be a journey? Yes. Will there be time to learn? Yes. But the way I envisioned it was, you'd start with someone, today most operation shops are inputting data, someone's checking that was inputted correctly, and then somebody else is then reading those documents. You have different levels of expertise, and the qualified CS certified doc checker is now then responsible for checking that document finally, and then they might even be checked, right? So your checker checks checker who checks checker, right? That's the kind of operation shop today. What this does is all that checking work is being done by the machine. Initial work, the information input is being done by machine. There might be some minor input. So those roles of inputting and checking, the data consistency is going to reduce maybe from 50% of the job to like 5% of the job. And that job, which was 50% of the doc check, that's going to reduce to 20%. And then there'll be new roles created across that, right? In terms of how you interact with customers, how you provide better advice to customers in terms of export markets and information on the ground. The shift in terms of what banks will do in terms of how they service their customers. This provides a real opportunity not only to the banks to differentiate their service to corporates so that they continue to use them and pay a premium for that, but also an opportunity for staff to upskill themselves and operation staff to upskill themselves. So, will there be fewer jobs? Yes. Will there be more interesting, more challenging jobs? Absolutely.
Reinforcing what Michael said, I ran a webinar for ICC India about 3 weeks ago 400 participants in India, all over the place. And this was one of the main questions. Where do we go? Well, we were talking about staffing. And they all said the problems they were facing, and I see this in UK as well and all over, attracting new people, young people to our paper business. They don't want to do it. You start mentioning artificial intelligence, machine learning. Oh yeah, lots and lots of interest suddenly. This is suddenly an exciting business again.
I think there's another question here, which is around, do you still need to do the qualifications? You do. You need to understand the basics and the fundamentals, because if you don't, then how are you going to advise a client, right? You can't be a non-expert advising a client. You still need to be an expert. But does that mean that you're going to spend hours and hours reading through documents and checking documents? No. Your learning journey is going to be different, but you're still going to have to understand what's discrepant, why it's discrepant, how you advise, what the differentiation of rules in Bangladesh are versus Pakistan. You're still going to have to understand it. And that's where you add value to that's where you're going to add value to the clients. But so the answer on should you undertake these qualifications? Yes, you should.
And I'd like to add a point to that, having until recently been a chief examiner for CITF and been involved very heavily in CDCS for the last 10 years. The challenge that NIBF and ICC face is they're having to update their textbooks more quickly than they used to. When they did them every 5 years, now we're updating every year. So we're taking note of these developments. We're incorporating far more digitalization solutions in these textbooks. So Michael is 100% right. You still have to understand the risk. But what we're doing now is saying it's moving slowly from paper to digital, and that's what the examinations will reflect in future.
Very good, excellent debate. Indeed, expertise and advisory will not go away. Operational tasks will be replaced gradually by machines, but still driving the process and serving the clients will still require expertise. I think that's one way to summarize it. So final question, as we still have a few minutes here, OCR technology has some challenges like recognizing 0 versus O, scanning issues and so on that may lead to a lot of irrelevant discrepancies. So how are those challenges being overcome?
And I can take a stab at that. I mean, that's obviously close to our heart, and it's interesting when when we started our journey, OCR was just the means to get the data to do the checks. It's become the focus for many people, because if the OCR is not right, then obviously nothing works further up. And there's been huge development in OCR and technology. I mean, we now work on what we call a neural network-based machine learning, deep learning focused models, which have shown unbelievable results. I mean, I'm actually quite bowled away by some of the stuff. So things like scanning, I mean, you can scan any way and it'll pick up the data. Even if it's slightly skewed, it straightens out and picks up the data. You talk about the 0 and the O. Again, there's lots of intelligence built in. So if, for example, the word is Oslo and it's 0 SLO and it's in the country, it will know 0 SLO means Oslo and it will correct it to Oslo because it's a country and there is no 0 SLO country, there's Oslo as a country. So there's lots of intelligence that's built into it. To say there's going to be no false positives, I think is a misnomer, because there'll always be false positives. But I think it's been reduced significantly. And I think David made the point about, do we have to clean documents in order to standardize? I think the point today is you don't. Even now, clearly, if there's, I had a customer recently come give me a document and I couldn't read it with my own eyes. And they say, show me the machine wrote it. I'm like, I can't read it with my own eyes. How can a machine read it? So you have to be, there is some level of being reasonable, but you'll see that the way the machine through some very advanced machine learning, things have improved hugely in the OCR space. It's not perfect, and will it ever be perfect? I don't know. We get to 80, 85% on attribute mapping. Will we get it to 9500? I'm not sure it ever exists. But the point we look at is the end-to-end time it takes to complete the transaction using the piece of manual intervention. That's the bit we're obsessed with. If it takes 3 hours and we can do it in 20 minutes, well, there's already a use case for that, even if it means of that 20 minutes, 15 is checking OCR data.
I just wanted to just reiterate what you just said there, Uzair. It doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter. And I know that a lot of people will use this as an excuse not to do something. Yeah. If you use that as an excuse not to do something, then it's just a limited amount of time that you're going to be in business. I think I think the reality is that 85%, 90%, you know, you're still going to have some checking, but you're reducing the data checking from 50% of the work to 5% of the work. That in itself creates efficiencies and saves time. And at the same time, OCR hopefully will not be around forever. You know, if you're optimistic, you're talking 5 to 10 years. If you're pessimistic, maybe 15 to 20 years. But we expect that, you know, as you get more countries move to Melita to digitize documents, and you have lots of these digital document solutions that are coming out. So, you know, I think what you'll end up happening is that a bunch of your documents will move from paper into electronic, and OCR will not be a problem anymore. But don't wait for it to happen before you start, because you've lost out. And I think that's the key point: is accept what's available, work with what's available, improve what you have, reduce the cost. I think when you look at the cost of, you know, using an OCR solution versus the cost of doing an AI check versus the cost of doing a fully manual solution, it will be cheaper. It will be cheaper, and it will be faster, and it will be more efficient, and you will need to upskill, and you will get on that journey to transformation faster. And I think what we're trying to get across with this ICC paper is that the moment is now for banks to start to shift and for corporates to start to shift, because it's available. And you know, if you wait, you know, you might never get there, and your competitors will.
These are great concluding words, Michael. Indeed, I would add there is magic finally in some of the technology we're talking about since years, and this is definitely it. And what I like in particular is the fact that it's an incremental innovation. Next time people say the letter of credit is dead, which is something we heard years ago at Cybos, I will use this example of how the letter of credit is definitely having a second life here, thanks to technology. And of course, this is not limited to the letter of credit, but usually this is the instrument that is seen as too old to survive in the 21st century. And so thanks a lot to all of you, Michael, Uzair, and Dave. It was a terrific panel. I thought we would keep it to 30 minutes, but with the questions and your great insights, it has been a terrific hour. I can confirm to our audience that we have recorded this session. For those of you who want to come back or share it, it will be available on YouTube in a few days, thanks to Kirsi. And with that, thanks again to the three of you, and I'll pass over to Kirsi for any final words.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you, Michael, David, and Uzair, and of course, Andre as well. Yes, I think the change is really coming, and it comes mainly because, first of all, banks have a heavy cost cutting. It applies to all areas, not only the transaction banking and trade finance. Anyway, they are cost cutting, meaning that they put people out, and then, of course, what we have been doing in Fintech Ecosystem, we have tried to help the great senior bankers, ex-bankers, to find new ways to work together with the corporate customers, together with the private customers, together with the banks, and also the tech and fintech companies. And financial technology is the great thing which will come anyway, because banks have to save. And more we can find the new interesting jobs, the better. I think that's the outcome. And who wants to have a paper document? Who wants to check manually the paper? Nobody wants to do that. There are more interesting jobs available. So I think we are ending this webinar number 5. And we will continue somewhere end of August, early September. Let's see. Andre and myself, we are quite innovative. So any important topic comes up, we really just start the new webinar. That's the way we work. because a lot of things are cooking in this area nowadays.
Yeah, and we definitely want to get early adopters on stage and talk to us about how they embrace this technology. So definitely we're looking forward to involve financial institutions and corporates here.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for all the participants. It was a pleasure to have you today.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.